Imagine a song so powerful it could calm storms, tame wild beasts, and soften even the hearts of gods. This was the gift of Orpheus, son of a muse, the greatest musician in all of Greek myth. But his story is not one of triumph. It is a story of love and of unbearable loss. The tale of Orpheus and Eurydice remains one of the most haunting of all time, a story of passion, of death, and the tragic cost of a single glance. Orpheus was born in Thrace, a region of northeastern Greece, as the son of the muse Calliope and, according to some legends, the god Apollo. From his divine parents, he inherited an extraordinary talent for music. Apollo himself was said to have given young Orpheus a golden lyre and taught him to play. Orpheus quickly surpassed all others in skill. His melodies were so beautiful that nothing could resist them, neither mortal enemies nor wild beasts. His music could charm birds from the trees and make even stones and rivers move to his rhythm. In the forests and fields, animals would gather peacefully around just to listen to Orpheus's lyre. Such was the power of his song that it enchanted all of nature, and even the gods themselves. In time, Orpheus's fame as a musician spread across Greece. He performed for kings and heroes, and even joined the crew of Jason's Argo on a famous expedition, using his music to aid the heroes on their journey. A tale for another time. But Orpheus's greatest story was not about adventure or fame. It was about the love that would forever change his life and test the limits of his gift. According to legend, Orpheus fell deeply in love with a young woman, the beautiful nymph Eurydice. The moment he first saw her dancing among the trees, Orpheus was entranced, and Eurydice too was drawn to the gentle prince of music. It was said to be love at first sight, sparked by Orpheus's enchanting song and Eurydice's radiant grace. Before long, the two vowed to be together forever. Orpheus and Eurydice were married in a joyful ceremony, with nymphs of the forest attending and Orpheus's music playing in celebration of their union. On their wedding day, however, a strange foreboding hung in the air. Hymen, the god of marriage, appeared to bless the feast, but the flame of his torch sputtered and smoked, a bad omen. In some versions of the myth, Hymen even warned that their perfect happiness was not meant to last. Orpheus and Eurydice, lost in love, paid no heed to prophecy. They were blissfully happy, unaware that fate was already moving to fulfill the ominous warning. Not long after the wedding, tragedy struck. As Eurydice strolled through the meadow with her companions, she became separated from Orpheus. In one version of the story, from Virgil's Georgics, a man named Aristaeus spotted Eurydice's beauty and tried to seize her. Frightened, Eurydice fled through the woods, but in her haste, she stepped on a poisonous snake hidden in the grass. The viper sank its fangs into her ankle, and Eurydice collapsed and died almost instantly. Other tellings say she was simply dancing among naiads when the fatal snakebite occurred. Either way, the result was the same. Orpheus's beloved was gone in an instant. Orpheus was devastated by Eurydice's sudden death. In his grief, he roamed the forests, pouring out his sorrow in heart-rending song. The wild creatures and even the rocks and trees wept to hear Orpheus's laments. He sang of his immeasurable love and agony, and his music was so haunting that it moved gods and humans alike. All of nature learned of Orpheus's pain. Unable to accept losing Eurydice forever, Orpheus made a bold resolve. He would journey to the underworld itself to try and bring her back. No living mortal had ever returned from Hades, the realm of the dead, but Orpheus's love was so strong that he dared attempt the impossible. Trusting in the divine power of his music to guide and protect him, he set out to defy death for the sake of his wife. With his lyre in hand, Orpheus traveled to the entrance of the underworld and descended into the realm of shadows. As he approached the river Styx, he encountered Cerberus, the great three-headed hound who guards the gates of Hades. Instead of fighting the monster, Orpheus began to play a soft melody. The music mesmerized the fearsome dog, soothing the beast into calm submission. Passing unharmed, Orpheus moved through the land of gloom where ghostly phantoms drifted. At last he came before the thrones of King Hades and Queen Persephone, the rulers of the underworld. The god and goddess were astonished to see a living man among the dead, and they demanded to know why he had come. Standing in that dark palace, Orpheus began to play and sing for his life. He sang of Eurydice, of their love, her beauty, and the cruel fate that had taken her. His music echoed in the halls of the dead, and every soul in Tartarus stopped to listen. The mournful song touched the hearts of even the most tormented spirits. It is said that as Orpheus played, the bloodless ghosts themselves wept, hearing the living man's sorrow. Tantalus, tortured by eternal thirst, paused in reaching for the receding water. Ixion's wheel, always spinning in punishment, fell still in wonder. The vulture ceased gnawing on Tityus's liver, and the Danaid sisters, Belides, put down their sieves. Even Sisyphus sat on his rock and stopped his futile toil as he listened. The Furies, dread goddesses of vengeance, felt tears on their cheeks for the first time ever. All the underworld was entranced by Orpheus's music, and a hush fell in that dread realm. Overcome with compassion, Persephone herself began to weep for the lovers. Hades, stern god of the dead, was moved by pity, an emotion unknown to him. Never before had mortal grief touched these gods so deeply. Hades agreed to grant Orpheus's plea and allow Eurydice to return to life. However, the god of the underworld imposed one strict condition. Orpheus must lead Eurydice out of Hades without ever looking back at her until they both had fully emerged into the light of the living world. Only after stepping out under the sun would he be permitted to turn around and finally embrace his wife again. If Orpheus looked too soon, even by a single glance, then the gift of Eurydice's life would be lost forever. Orpheus thanked Hades and Persephone fervently and vowed to obey. Eurydice's spirit was then called forth. She came limping from among the shades, still marked by the serpent's bite on her heel. Overjoyed, Orpheus gently took her by the hand. Without a word, for the dead travel silently, husband and wife began the long, dark ascent back toward the world above, climbing through passages of rock and gloom towards the distant glow of daylight. In absolute silence, Orpheus and Eurydice crept upward through the dim tunnels of Hades. Orpheus walked ahead as instructed, with Eurydice following behind in the darkness. He could not see her, and the only sounds were his own footsteps and perhaps the faint rustle of her gown. As they neared the exit, a faint glow grew in the tunnel, hinting at the world beyond. Orpheus was trembling with eagerness. Just a few more steps, and his beloved wife would be restored to him. Yet, as the light grew stronger, a terrible doubt gnawed at Orpheus. Eurydice had been utterly silent the whole way. What if the gods had deceived him? What if her spirit was not truly following? Unable to hear or feel her presence, Orpheus began to fear that he was alone and that his daring effort had been for nothing. At last, unable to bear it, Orpheus succumbed to his anxiety. Just a few steps from freedom, he hastily turned his head to assure himself that Eurydice was still there. In that single glance, all was lost. He saw in the dim light behind him the pale figure of Eurydice. For an instant, their eyes met. Eurydice's filled with love and concern, and then she began to fade back into darkness. Orpheus cried out and reached desperately for her, but in vain. His arms clutched only empty air. Eurydice was snatched away in that moment, pulled back into the underworld forever because Orpheus had broken his promise. She managed to speak one final word to her husband, a faint whisper of farewell. Then Eurydice was gone, lost to death a second time. Orpheus was left standing alone at the threshold of the living world, now doubly bereaved. He had come so close to triumph, only to lose everything in an instant. Overwhelmed with grief and guilt, Orpheus tried to run after Eurydice into the land of the dead, but this time Hermes, the guide of souls, blocked his path and sent him back. No mortal was allowed to enter Hades twice while alive. The gates of the underworld were closed to Orpheus now. Eurydice was gone, and there would be no second chance. Orpheus returned to the world of life in utter despair. He had witnessed a joy few ever see, his love restored, and then in a moment of doubt, he had lost her again. Now there was nothing left for him but his music and his sorrow. Day after day, Orpheus wandered in mourning, singing his laments to the hills and rivers. He shunned all company, refusing to take another bride or even look at another woman, remaining devoted to Eurydice's memory. In time, Orpheus's lonely vigil drew the ire of others. One version of the myth says that a group of Thracian Maenads, female followers of Dionysus, grew angry at Orpheus for spurning their frenzied celebrations and rejecting their company. In their madness, these women attacked Orpheus while he sang his lonely songs. His enchanting music had once tamed wild beasts, but the Maenads, drunk on wine and fury, were beyond its power. They overpowered Orpheus and tore him to pieces in their rage. Thus Orpheus met a violent end, his blood staining the land he had wandered. Some legends claim the Maenads were punished by the gods for this heinous crime. Dionysus transformed them into trees for harming the blessed musician. Though his mortal life was over, Orpheus's story did not end in emptiness. Orpheus's shade, his spirit, descended to the underworld, where at last he found Eurydice once again. In death, nothing could ever part them. The two lovers were reunited among the shadows, side by side forever. Now Orpheus could gaze at Eurydice as much as he liked, with no fear of losing her. Their souls walked together in peace, bound for eternity by the very love that had driven Orpheus to defy the gods. Even the heavens seemed to acknowledge the greatness of Orpheus. It is said the Muses gathered the pieces of Orpheus's body and buried him with honor. They took up his lyre and placed it among the stars as the constellation Lyra, so that the memory of Orpheus's music would live on in the night sky. Poets and artists throughout the ages have retold the tale of Orpheus and Eurydice, moved by its profound tragedy and beauty. Orpheus and Eurydice's story remains a timeless lesson about love, trust, and loss. It speaks to the human truth that even the greatest gifts cannot overcome fate, and that a single moment of doubt can undo a world of devotion. In the end, the tale of Orpheus reminds us of the tragic cost of a single glance, echoing through history as one of mythology's most haunting love stories. Sources: The legend of Orpheus and Eurydice is recorded in numerous ancient sources and literary works. Major classical versions include Virgil's Georgics 4, which introduces Aristeus and the tragic ending, and Ovid's Metamorphoses 10-11, which emphasizes Orpheus's song and the double loss. The Greek author Apollodorus also summarized the myth in his library, noting Orpheus's parentage, his attempt to retrieve Eurydice, and his death at the hands of the Maenads. These sources agree on the central narrative. Orpheus, the greatest musician, loses his beloved Eurydice to a snakebite, travels to Hades to win her back with music, but tragically loses her again by disobeying the command not to look back. The aftermath of Orpheus's failure, his mourning, his brutal death, and the lovers' reunion in the afterlife, is poignantly described by later writers. This enduring myth has been retold through the centuries, reinforcing its status as one of the most poignant love tragedies in Western mythology. Thank you for watching Great Myths Explained. If this tale moved you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and join us as we uncover more timeless stories of gods, heroes, and the lessons they carry through the ages. Until our next journey together, farewell.